The 2023 NFL Draft is in the books, so we're handing out superlatives today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On NFL Scouting your first listen every day. And, of course, a big welcome to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single show, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much.
Joe, happy May 1st to you. It's 11 and a half months away from the 2024 NFL Draft.
You know what I learned today?
That it's May.
It is, but so there's a tradition here that I learned courtesy of Sal Capaccio. If you say on the first day of the month, if you say rabbit, 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 it is a superstition that if you say them aloud on the first day of the month, it will ensure good luck for the rest of it. So rabbit, 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 rabbit.
Is it 3 or 4 times?
Just repeat it. Just repeat the words aloud.
All right, we're going to do the science experiment.
Yeah.
And you're going to do it, and I'm not going to do it.
Oh, man, you're willing to take...
And we're going to see how the month goes.
Brother, all right, we'll revisit this on June 1st.
June 1st, we're going to see who had a luckier... Start a log of all your luck.
Do the best I can.
All right, so we are doing your favorite thing in the entire whole wide world.
Which was your idea, by the way.
It was my idea, because we said, hey... We really wanted to get into the weeds on some of these draft classes, but we want to do something for everybody immediately on the first show after the draft, right? We didn't want to go right into why the Carolina Panthers draft class, da-da-da-da-da, or whatever reason, and 31 other fan bases are like, well, okay. And many of you, the everydayers for sure, but I would assume everybody who subscribes to this podcast would carry a certain level of interest in all of those conversations from a team building perspective because there's parallels that would apply to everything. But we wanted to leave the door open for all 32 teams to get some narratives today on the show. So we are doing 6 draft class superlatives. The draft class that did each of the that is each of the following: the most to help their quarterback, the most aggressive, did the most with the least, has the highest chance to be a foundational class, is your favorite, and the one that you need to see first because you're just a little uncertain about what we're trying to do.
I'm excited, man.
You should do the honors.
All right.
I will tell you, the first one is the one I struggle with the most.
No question. I don't have like a whole lot to say outside of like the team that I picked for the rest of them, but the first one was the one where I spent the most time trying to figure out my answer. So the first one is which team did the most to help their quarterback.
Yeah.
All right. And I narrowed it down to 5 teams. I only picked one. I narrowed it down to 5. The 5 teams that I narrowed it down to were Detroit, Buffalo, Atlanta, Jacksonville, and Tennessee. Okay. I eliminated Jacksonville and Tennessee, and I got it down to Buffalo, Detroit, and Atlanta. I settled on Atlanta. And the reason I chose Atlanta is obviously their first 2 picks. Bijan Robinson, the running back from Texas at number 8. And then at number 38, offensive lineman Matthew Bergeron from Syracuse. Obviously the Falcons, it looks like they're rolling with Desmond Ridder at quarterback. And I can't think of a more meaningful thing that they could do for Desmond Ridder than to give him Bijan Robinson, right? Who is going to be a player they can lean on offensively. They can run the offense through Bijan. He will be able to run the football and catch it, pass protection, inside-outside runner. He's a limitless player. And he's the type of guy that you can just trust to carry the load. He's proven that ability at Texas. And he's going into a situation with a head coach in Arthur Smith who knows how to get the run game going, but also a pretty stable offensive line. And an offensive line that gets better with the addition of Matthew Bergeron, who I think could come in and if they want to, play him at guard right away and be an upgrade at left guard for them. And so I just think the infrastructure is in place for Bijan to thrive. I trust the coach, and I think he's going to mean a ton for Desmond Ridder immediately. And so that's what tipped the scales in favor of the Falcons over Buffalo and Detroit as my other finalist.
So the Falcons were my honorable mention.
Okay.
They were number 2 on my list. My number 1 did not make your short list at all.
This is great.
And you had a quarter of the league on your short list. And
draft dudes do math. I don't think 5 is quite a quarter of 32, but
it's close enough.
It's 3 away 20%. From being a quarter, you know.
Green Bay Packers. These 2 tight ends on day 2. We had the big question about the tight end room. You have the receiving upside of Lucas Van Ness, the receiving upside of Tucker Kraft. Jaden Reed on day 2. They spent 3 of their 4 day 2 selections, or 3 of their 4 day 1 and 2 selections in skill players for Jordan Love to do the same thing that you talked about too, to help make the running game better with the tight ends and the multiplicity that's going to provide the offense, giving a seam-busting player, giving a different skill set at wide receiver in Jaden Reed. The fact that they went skill group a bunch and then really made sure that Jordan Love had all the job security in the world by drafting, apparently Sean Clifford's going to be the backup, so you know full well that Jordan Love is going to sleep well at night knowing nobody's going to come in here and take his job. And not to sleep on Dontavian Wicks either, as a player from Virginia who maybe can make a little bit of noise as a day 3 selection in the 5th round, but really like Musgrave, Reed, Tucker, Kraft combo and what that will do to the offense to allow the Packers to stay personnel multiple, go to some 12 personnel and run the ball, but then still have athletic players for Jordan Love to prosper with throwing the ball too.
Well, little sidebar debate on why I didn't put Green Bay. And they're your choice.
You used them somewhere else?
No, I didn't use them somewhere else.
Oh, so why did you not put them on that?
I thought about Green Bay. There's some things that eliminated them from my consideration. Was first of all, their first round pick wasn't used on an offensive player, so I took that into consideration. And then I don't know how much immediate help those players are going to provide. They need to, right? Because they don't have a whole lot else at tight end on their depth chart. But we're talking about Luke Musgrave, who played like 2 games last year. And we're talking about Tucker Kraft, who's making the jump from the FCS level. And tight ends can be slow developing. And so I had questions about the immediate impact, and I have a criticism that they didn't pick any offensive linemen. So that's what took Green Bay off of my radar for that.
Okay. Well, they have invested a ton of offensive linemen the last few years. Myers, Sean Ryan, those are day 2 picks. Runyon, is a cockroach they can't get rid of in the starting lineup.
Careful, Packers fans going to be after you for calling cockroach, just like the Vikings fans.
Look, it's a compliment. You try and kill him and replace him, and
but that was the least important. You're attacking the least important part of my argument.
Well, I didn't get to the other part yet because I'm pondering what amount of receptions I want to try to formulate a Built Bar bet with you for the receptions that these tight ends contribute to the offense this year.
Okay.
What's a number you think is predictive for the number of receptions?
I'm not going there. You're the one that's higher on their year 1 impact than I am, so you can set that bar.
Let me think about it. But I think because you made the point, they don't have a lot else. They don't really have a choice. Those guys are going to have to play. It's whether or not they're going to play well or not, right?
Let's hope it's not the second coming of Dalton Keene and Devin Asiasi from the Packers.
Man.
No, I like those players way better. That was just me. That was Belichick catching a stray. That wasn't a criticism towards Green Bay. I like these players better.
Most aggressive draft?
I mean, I went first last time. I can do it again, but
it's the Houston Texans. They picked a quarterback at number 2 and then traded up to number 3 overall to get the best defensive player on their board. That for me was pretty black and white. To go up to 3 from 12 the way that they did and give up a future one, their own future one, in a year in which you're not necessarily expecting this team's going to be super competitive this year. They might be because of the AFC South. But, year 1 with a new coaching staff, Nick Cassera, we kind of heard the rumblings. It might not be all apple pie in the sky. Still trade up to number 3 after taking the quarterback at number 2, and for a haul that you got everybody on the timeline over the weekend saying, well, if you really think about it, they actually traded up for Stroud and just took Anderson at 2, but they took Stroud at 2 because they couldn't risk him going to 3 and then getting outbid, but they paid a quarterback price to go up to 2 even though they picked the quarterback, or to go up to 3 even though they picked the quarterback. Like, really aggressive move. So that for me was like, that's the most aggressive class, period.
All right, you thought that was pretty cut and dry for Houston. I think it's pretty cut and dry for my pick, the Carolina Panthers. They traded to number 1. They gave up 2 first-rounders, DJ Moore, a second-round pick or something like that, and they chose Bryce Young, Kyle, with the number 1 pick. They did it. You said 5'10", 190. Come on down, baby. You're the number 1 pick in the draft. You're our guy, right? That's aggressive. And then, I mean, I think that kind of speaks for itself, but also trading up for DJ Johnson. They went from 93 to 80 and gave up 132. That's a lot to go from 93 to 80 to forget DJ Johnson, a bet on Trade Sky. I was listening to Charlotte radio this morning on the way. I took my dog to the vet this morning, and they were talking about DJ Johnson, and a lot of people concerned that he punched that Oregon State fan after the game. That was the big topic buzzing this morning. I thought I would hear other things, but that's what I heard about. Jonathan Mingo at 39. I mean, I like Jonathan Mingo, but that's a high pick on a receiver, right? That, I think has some development there. Injured player in Chandler Zavala in the 4th round. I think there was a lot aggressive here.
You didn't like this, huh?
It's not that I don't like it. I think it's just aggressive.
You gonna double?
They went out and did their thing.
Need to see it too.
No, I got a different team and need to see it. So
I actually had a number of need to see it.
Well, so. Yeah, I know, but glad we only have one more negative twist. But I think the most aggressive was the Carolina Panthers.
It's not even negative.
Just need to see it, right?
You just need to see it.
I don't need to see people not eat Built bars, eating other protein bars, because these are the best protein bars on the planet, Kyle. They're awesome, right? They're healthy. They're delicious. They're delicious because they're covered in 100% real chocolate, and they come in amazing flavors like brownie, batter, puff, and churro, and coconut almond, and cookie dough. So many great flavors. Covered 100% chocolate, but they're also healthy, right? It's like you're eating a candy bar, but it's healthy for you. They're low calorie, low sugar, high in protein, off the charts macros. Don't know how Built was able to thread the needle there, but they did, between healthy and delicious. So check them out. You can head on over to Built.com. Use our promo code LOCKEDON15. You'll get 15% off your next order, but you can also head to your local Walmart or Sam's Club and pick up a box off the shelf. Try them. You'll thank us later.
Our third superlative is who did the most with the least. All right. It is your turn, Mr. Marino, to lead us off.
All right, my pick for most with the least, and this was one that I debated back and forth, but I'm going with the Baltimore Ravens for this one.
Can I jump in? I also picked the Ravens. So
you did?
We can just have the conversation, yeah.
All right. Well, I think my lead point here is, they had a 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, right? So no 2. They went 22 and 86 for their first 2 picks. Zay Flowers, I think, is going to be a tremendous asset for Lamar Jackson in the passing game. But it's really about some of their later picks, being able to get Caillou Blue-Kelly in the 5th round, who I think can potentially start for them. It would not surprise me if he was a starter. A toolsy player like Tavius Robinson in the 4th round to add to their mix at edge. And then Andrew Voorhees, who is worth a pick much higher than 229. Perfect scheme fit for him, right? I think we can agree there. But also, he'll probably have to take a redshirt year, but they could have an answer in the 7th round next year. So didn't have a ton of draft capital, but I really like what they were able to get done here.
Yeah. And didn't he mention Trenton Simpson at 86 with Patrick Queen kind of going into a 5th-year option year, right? Or they have to make a 5th-year option decision there?
Yeah.
And if they can develop, and that's kind of the question for Trenton Simpson is can he be an all-time stack linebacker? But it's a nice toolsy selection with really good kind of 3rd down potential value in a blitz pressure defense to go with that as well at 86. So I would not be surprised if you told me Voorhees goes on IR, they stash him for the year, put him on IR, and the first 4 picks make the roster, and 2 or 3 of those guys have really, really meaningful 2023 seasons as rookies for Baltimore.
Kyle, you're pretty dialed in on Trenton Simpson, and you're dialed in on Mike McDonald, the defensive coordinator for the Ravens from his time at Michigan. What about that fit intrigues you? being able to utilize that versatility to its fullest based on what you know about both of those situations.
Yeah, well, I think McDonald is a pressure-oriented blitz defense. They're one of the more, and it was that way with the previous coaching staff as well under Harbaugh, but that was part of the appeal to bring him back from Michigan was he was in that pipeline as the linebackers coach, and Trenton Simpson was at his best when he was under Brent Venables and was able to be moved around and played on the edge a little bit. They did play him intermittently in 2021 as a stack backer. I didn't think it showcased the best of his ability, and I think he really struggled when some of the creativity left the defense this past year, and they kind of just put him in the box. So I think Mike McDonald being willing and able to move personnel around and get him walked up on the line of scrimmage, whether that's on the edge or in inside gaps, I think really puts Trenton Simpson in a position to let his natural athleticism as a 230-pound linebacker take over.
Him and Kyle Hamilton on that defense.
Yeah, it's fun.
I mean, of course, with all the other players they have, but those two guys and their versatility and what a creative defensive mind can get done with them, pretty intriguing.
Yep, it's intriguing. I think intriguing is the best word because I think Trenton doesn't have a clear-cut projection, but he's someone who I think in a pressure system where some of these reps are going to be a little bit more elementary. It's just you're firing and you're going. I think we'll let him play fast.
And I know that this is not great for Trenton Simpson because he lost a lot of money, but being picked 86th, I think kind of takes the pressure off, right? You've seen Isaiah Simmons or Zaven Collins, some of these hybrid players, even Hassan Reddick, I know he figured it out later on. They go early and there's an adjustment there because they're going to be very versatile players, has to do a lot of different things and doesn't always click right away. I think him being a third-round pick allows that to happen more naturally.
I would agree with you. The class that has the best chance to be a foundational draft class. There's some good candidates here.
There was. I settled on one, but I think it's your turn to go first.
I settled on one, but I also have an honorable mention that I want to acknowledge.
Okay.
And I would be willing to bet that my honorable mention is once again, like it was with the first one, your answer, because I think I know what your primary argument is going to be.
All right.
My honorable mention is the Indianapolis Colts.
Okay.
My selection is the Detroit Lions.
Fun.
You just look top to bottom with what Detroit was able to get done, and this was part of the plan with Brad Holmes and pooling all these draft picks, and they went and got really good football players. Maybe not the best positional value, but quite frankly, with where the roster is at and trying to fill in the blanks, they have a dice roll on a quarterback in Hendon Hooker in here that they went up and got, and they moved for him. But Laporta, Branch, Campbell, Gibbs, those are all really, if they are the players we think they are coming out of college football, those are really meaningful starters for your football team for the next 4 or 5 seasons until you have to make a contract decision. And that kind of volume in the top 50, plus a developmental quarterback to roll the dice with, puts me in a position where I couldn't pick anybody else. But I will acknowledge just how promising the Indianapolis Colts haul looks as well.
So if I had an honorable mention, I'd probably pick the Lions because I do think it was like kind of a glue draft. And I like that in terms of like foundational as well. So I wanted to find a place for Detroit. Spoiler alert, I don't have one, but I think honorable mention here makes sense. My foundational choice is not the Indianapolis Colts, Kyle. It's a different team in the AFC South, one that you already used. It's the Houston Texans.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, C.J. Stroud at 2, trading up for Will Anderson at number 3. You have to look at that if you're Houston as your franchise cornerstones on both sides of the football, the guys that you're going to build the entire thing around offensively and defensively. And so some pretty unique circumstances for them to be able to get both of those players. But I mean, you could make a case that they got the best player in the draft and the best quarterback in the draft. And with one of those guys being on offense, one being on defense, I can see them just being literally the foundation for everything moving forward. I think if you want to get into some of their later picks, I think they may have gotten a starting center and Juice Scruggs, which will be important. Dylan Horton,
I would hope they did, since they traded up for him like
62, right? Henry To'oTo'o, I mean, not his best year in Alabama. Go back to 2021. It looked really good. You love him with DeMeco Ryans. Maybe he'll be an answer. And their last 2 picks might have been my favorite last 2 picks for any team. And Xavier Hutchinson at 205, the receiver from Iowa State. Brandon Hill at 248, the safety from from Pittsburgh. Not that they really swing the pendulum in this being a foundational class. I just want to shout out some picks that I like. But Stroud and Anderson, I know that you used it as the most aggressive, which I think makes a lot of sense. But to me, I wanted to use it here for foundational.
Very good. Well, we have 2 more to go. We have our personal favorites, and I have an honorable mention there as well. I would be remiss to not have an honorable mention ready to go there. And then the ones that we need to see, the classes we need to see on the field to decide what the vision was supposed to be and how effective it will ultimately be. So we're going to finish with those 2 next year on Locked On NFL Scouting. Favorite draft class, Joe Marino, do you have an honorable mention?
I guess my honorable mention would be Philadelphia.
I also have Philadelphia in honorable mention.
Is it my turn to go first?
It is your turn to go first.
All right, my favorite draft class belongs to you probably know who this is going to be.
I have a feeling it's probably the same one I have, but.
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yes.
Oh, you picked them too? I thought maybe you wouldn't, but you did.
I have Seattle as 3rd place on my honorable mentions as well. So.
Wow, look at you. You're doing the Joe Marino special here, coming to the table with
we're trying to get as many fan bases engaged with this show as we possibly can.
True.
But yeah, Pittsburgh, 4 top 100 picks. They got some good players late. Go ahead. Talk about those first 4 picks are really big time needle movers.
I love Broderick Jones, man. I don't think there's much of a difference between him and Paris Johnson in terms of how I viewed them as prospects. And one went, where did Paris went? 6. Broderick Jones at 14. I think Jones is going to be such a stud and such a meaningful player for them on that O-line and helping Kenny Pickett and helping Najee Harris. Joey Porter, a player we thought they might have picked with their first pick, they got with 32. Obvious scheme fit. The legacy stuff, we know that matters a ton for them. A position where I think they needed an answer. They get a high tools guy. Keanu Benton's like one of my favorite defensive linemen in this class. I love him in that defense as their, kind of A-gap defender, learning from Casey Hayward. Darnell Washington, I mean, an absolute alien at 93. Being able to lean into some 12 personnel with him in Freiermuth at tight end, man. I mean, that's outstanding. And then, I mean, even you keep going down the list and you can see toolsy players in Herbig and Trice and Anderson. That makes sense for kind of their day 3 haul. I just love everything about it.
Those first 4 picks, I mean, they will just whoop your butt. You think about Pittsburgh Steelers football.
Prototypes, man.
Like all those eye-rolling cliches about like being a like who he plays like a Pittsburgh Steeler, right? But like this is it. This is the class that really feels like it embodies what the Steelers' reputation going all the way back to when they had their dynasty in the mid-70s has been forged on this certain identity of playing football. And when the players that you bring in to this degree have the level of size, physicality, explosiveness, and you do it 4 times in a row in the top 100, it's hard to ignore. And I think that's probably why they're consensus our favorite draft class.
So you had Pittsburgh, Philly, and who was your third? Seattle. Yeah,
With Smith and Jigba, Derek Hall, Zach Charbonnet,
dude.
And then on day 3 they got Mike Morris, Olatami, and Kenny McIntosh as picks that I really liked.
Yeah. I might not have a different top 3, man. Those are 3 great classes for sure.
There's a lot of classes that I liked, but it was just those 3 was a mix of like volume of players and volume of players that you thought were going to be gone by their picks.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's a great I would have never thought any of the players that they got would have been available where they got them. Very, very fair.
Right? Like that's you do the mock draft simulator, like this thing's broken. Keely Ringo's available at 105.
Yeah.
This thing's broken. Kenny McIntosh is there at 237. This thing's broken. Darnell Washington's there at 93.
Mm-hmm. Shout out to the people that have draft simulators because it's tough to thread that needle with that algorithm, man.
I didn't miss that over the last 8 weeks.
Yeah,
pouring my heart and soul into those. Tinkering, adjusting, simulating. Okay.
All for the weird things that happen just to happen anyways, right?
Right.
You fight so hard.
I don't want this outcome to happen that's actually going to happen in real life, and we're going to praise the team for being the team that has the common sense to stop the player from falling down the board, right? Okay.
It's not fun getting yelled at,
Need to see it.
I hope we don't have the same pick here. I'm kind of afraid we do.
Joe, I have like 6.
So should I go and then you pivot? Or
no, I mean, let's just start throwing some names out here.
I only have one to throw out there.
How about the Denver Broncos? I understand they didn't have a first or second round pick when the draft started. But your class is Marvin Mims, Drew Sanders, Riley Moss, J.L. Skinner, and Alex Forsythe.
I like those first 2 picks.
And I know you're higher on both of those players than I am. So Drew Sanders will be playing stack linebacker for the second time in his career. This year as a rookie for the Broncos, assuming that he does that. And if he doesn't do that, then what does that mean for Baron Browning? Given that Baron Browning's a hybrid linebacker type who can rush the passer.
Might be good news for Josie Jewell.
Right, as a stack linebacker. And he's never done that before.
Have Josie Jewell play in the mic and just send those guys, man.
Okay. So you're gonna rush 5 on every play in the AFC West?
We're gonna rush Sanders a little bit. Browning's a good coverage player.
And Mims is wide receiver what on this depth chart?
Assuming
there's no players traded, he's wide receiver what in the depth chart?
Probably 3.
Tim Patrick?
29, coming off of an ACL. I mean, had like one good season in his life. Cortland Sutton's kind of been shaky, man. Jerry Jeudy's he going to be around?
And that's what I need. That's why I need to see it.
All right.
I need to see what you do from here to figure out, okay, here's the impact that you're going to get from this class. So that was one of the needs to see it's for me.
The one that I settled on was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
That was number 2 on my list.
Yeah, brother, I got to see
what the heck happened here.
I don't know. Kalijah Kancey, we figured somebody was going to pick him in the first round. If I were to stack all the teams that I thought would do it, somewhere in the bottom 8, you'd find Tampa Bay, and they're the ones that picked him at 19. Really just a unique player that's hard to forecast how effective he's going to be and how much volume of snaps he can play. And I like that he's going to be next to Vita Vea, but like this is going to be an odd front defense. Where's Kalijah Kancey fit into that? I don't know, man. Questions about that. Cody Mauch, is he going to be a center? How quickly can he do that? Ryan Jensen's there. There's a transition that needs to happen. Yaya Diaby, the 3rd pick, had a good last season, really toolsy, but there's a lot to unlock with his game and how quickly he can be an answer. And I actually kind of like some of these later picks, some Payne Durham and Trey Palmer, Jose Ramirez. Those are good late round picks, but your early investments, I've got like questions about all 3 of them and how it's all going to come together. So,
right, so
I got to see it.
I want to know how Todd Bowles is planning on maximizing Kalijah Kancey.
Right.
How about the Jaguars? Have you looked at this class in its entirety yet? Really let it sunk in with their 13 draft selections and who they came home with for Trent Baalke and company?
I've looked through it.
Now, we understand the need for Anton Harrison, right?
Mm-hmm. You kind of hate that you got forced into that pick, it feels like,
correct.
Right?
You do. I absolutely hate it for them. Then Brenton Strange, who I think we're both excited about. I think going on the second round is a little bit of a surprise for some in this tight end class. But then you go Tank Bigsby, Ventrell Miller, Tyler Lacey, Yasir Abdullah, Antonio Johnson's kind of interesting, Parker Washington's kind of interesting, Christian Braswell, Eric Hollett, Cooper Hodges. Oh, for 13 draft picks, how many players do you have a warm and fuzzy outlook for? And I understand they had 3 picks in the top 100 and then everything else was outside the top 120. So like that compounds this a little bit. I understand that. But Tank Bigsby, Ventrell Miller, Tyler Lacey in the 3rd and 4th round.
Yeah. And I'm not that high on Antonio Harrison either. I think he's got to get a lot stronger.
At tackle?
Yes. really like an opposite. Like if Cam Robinson was your left tackle and you pivot to Anton Harrison, could you have a more different player?
So I put all that together, and I need to see it. And
I think it's a fair one.
Obviously, the Jacksonville with Balky and kind of the reputation that he had forged and looked early returns from the 2022 class look good. Well, you got to give it to me again. I got to see it for Jacksonville.
Fair enough.
How about the Raiders? With the needs that they had, coming away with what they did, what are your thoughts on that class?
I mean, when we were on our live stream, I thought I had some criticism here, and you were really in on it. It felt like a little bit more than I was. I love Tyree Wilson, though. But, I mean, this team has big-time needs, and, like I said, I love Tyree Wilson, but you do have Max Crosby and Chandler Jones, then you come back and you pick a tight end. I thought you had, like, big-time issues at some important spots.
Joe, they didn't draft a single offensive lineman.
Unbelievable.
You need to see it. You're playing in the West, and you got Jimmy G behind that offensive line right now. And I know you're going to run the ball. Got to see it. And then the only help they got in the secondary was Ja'Cory Bennett.
Right. We thought tackle or corner in the first round, right?
Yeah.
And we get a edge, and then we come back and get a tight end.
Yeah, we thought the two most likely positions the Raiders would draft, if it wasn't C.J. Stroud that fell, was tackle and corner, and they drafted one of both of those positions combined, and it came at 104 in spite of 4 picks in the top 100. Now, they got good value with Michael Mayer, I think, for sure. They traded out 3 spots to go get him and gave up 141. So it's hard to knock the Mayer pick in a vacuum. But when you put that in the midst of the entire picture, I think that's where it just becomes a class that I'm going to have to see.
I don't have like a long list of need to see. I had my one team, the Buccaneers, so.
Make sure I'm not missing anything here. Washington's is a little interesting to me too. Forbes, Martin, Stromberg, Braden Daniels, KJ Henry, Chris Rodriguez, Andre Jones.
That's pretty fair. 166-pound corner in the first round. Martin's
Stromberg
a nice slot.
It's a little surprising. Braden Daniels undersized.
And that's kind of a weird situation, too, with new ownership, right? Ron Rivera, hasn't won a lot of football. Like, they've been mediocre, right, at best. A lot invested in the offense. Bieniemy coming over, I think, will be a nice jolt, but it feels like it's kind of do or die time for them, and they're rolling with Sam Howell, new owner, and Ron Rivera, who's not really proven to be a consistent winner.
Right. So I'll need to see that one, too. Not saying I don't like it. I just want to see it first before I make my mind up. We hope you saw enough to know that you like our content here on Locked On NFL Scouting. For those of you who may be new, thank you for checking out the show. For those of you who are our everydayers, we appreciate you. We appreciate everyone who stopped in today. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He's Joe Marino. It's your teams every day here on the Locked On Network. Make sure you keep it locked in with us here on Locked On NFL Scouting. Hope to talk to you all again tomorrow.